Hello everyone, welcome to the second lecture on the practical empirical implementation project of PEEP. So in this lecture we will be discussing about the various methodological interventions that were introduced in this PEEP project on East Kolkata wetlands through its 4 phases, and how the new concept methodological framework of ethnography was applied in the wetlands as part of this SMUS toolkit process. So, we left in the last lecture we left the conversation on understanding East Kolkata wetlands as a dynamic urban ecological heritage. So, the reason we had discussed on using the EKW as a case study for the project was to not only to make the people of Kolkata understand the importance of the wetlands to the city, but also to actually see and contextualize the perception regarding wetlands among her own inhabitants, the local people, on how they perceived this ecological heritage of the wetlands as a space. Because we were very much willing to understand that why is there a constant dichotomy, this challenge increasing between the city people and the people from the peri-urban spaces. Why is there a constant difference of understanding, and why are these sensitive spaces such as the East Kolkata wetlands, Ramsar recognized space, constantly threatened by this checks by urbanization, by bureaucratic practices. So, we realize that we need to permeate this understand of urban ecological heritage in the firstly to the people of wetlands themselves, and if through the application of the spatial methods they can enhance their own understanding and then teach the people of the city on how to respect and protect the place that has been helping in sustaining them. So, we were working with Disappearing Dialogues, a creative collective, on the selection of the young adult students from the wetland schools on whom we could train in this SMUS toolkit process. So, this is an illustration of the wetlands that was developed as part of this project. So, in this particular image you will see a aerial sketch of the wetlands showing the multiplicities of the space. Here you will see the roads that are leading among the wetlands, the ponds, the greeneries, and at the same time the presence of natural and not natural elements as well. So, what we had to do, we realized that there are so many realities existing within the East Kolkata wetlands itself. We need to approach them and understand this reality through a very gradual and a very deeply rooted empirical process, which were the 4 phases of PEEP: data collection, analysis, practical empirical implementation, and finally the evaluation process. So, before beginning the PEEP project in the East Kolkata wetlands, where we would be teaching the students the spatial methods, we realized that we needed to orient the students first on what this project is actually about, because after all they are the custodians of the place. They are the the young minds who will be inheriting this ecological space, and in order for EKW to survive, they in future need to collaborate with the local community and the city of Kolkata to make them understand that what they have learned from this project, and how the people from wetlands see the wetlands and how they see the city, and why this this gap between both of them should be reduced. So, we held orientation workshops with the students. So, the students we are talking about were selected from 2 schools from the East Kolkata wetlands, from almost the heart of the wetlands itself, that is the Bamunghata High School and the Khiadaho High School. So, we selected around 16 students, male and female, and they all belong from classes of 8 and 9. So the selection process of the students, actually we had to depend a bit on the creative collective disappearing dialogues, because they were an organization who had already been working in the wetlands for a long period of time. They had been working very closely with the schools itself. They had been working in various engagement workshops where they would teach the students about the space. They would take the students to various platforms in the city to make them gain knowledge and skills. And DD often held various exhibition and practices where they got the opportunity to see and evaluate the artistic capabilities of the students themselves. So it was the first step was actually done in collaboration between the IIT Kharagpur team and the Disappearing Dialogue Creative Collective, where this gave us a bunch of students, around 16 students, and we decided to orient them about the objectives of this project itself, of what are the methods, why these methods are important. And we began by questioning them about the space itself. Like we started with the question that what do you know about the East Kolkata wetlands, the place that you live in? Because we are the outsiders. The IIT Kharagpur team doesn't live there. We are just researching on it. So we held these workshops in their school classrooms only. And as you can see in the pictures behind me, the students were raising their hand very with a lot of motivation that I will tell you what this wetland is about, what my home is about. So they would tell us about the lot of flora and fauna in this field, about what they see from the windows of their homes, and why this place is so important and everything. But something that came to our notice that during this orientation workshops was they had a pretty negative perception of how the city treats the wetlands, as if the city was an antithesis to the existence of the wetlands. They believe that the city is the main threat to their home. So we asked them that if they know how the wetland actually survives, and we realized that even though they live in the very deep, densely located homes within the wetlands beside the sewage fed fisheries, they have no idea where this sewage comes from, how it was this system was created, who created this, what was the role of the colonial legacy in this creation of the wetlands. So this orientation workshops actually broke the ice between the academic the academic team and the inhabitants of space. We both both groups were learning about wetlands in a new perspective. We, the academic team, were learning about the grassroots realities of the place, about how the people are living there beyond those technical knowledges of livelihoods and all everything. We were learning about the social cohesion that exists among people, the non-natural interactions that are going on in different parts of the wetlands. And the people of the wetlands were learning a bit about the connections that exist in between the city and this natural ecological place. So this actually helped us in establishing a rapport. And so as a next part of this orientation workshop, we decided to take the students to another international workshop that was being held on at that point of time by the Max Muller Bhavan on perceiving the EKW as a critical zone. So what are the concept of critical zone, of particular specific spaces that are very important to the sustenance of the Earth's ecological balance. Wetlands holds a very important part of it. And in this workshop, we were trying, we exposed the students to this new perception on how actually the world perceives the wetlands. So in this particular workshop, the first part of the workshop was held in the Indian Museum, the National Museum of India, and we had taken them to the exhibitions that were being held, where lot of illustrations and PPT presentations, lot of handmade craftsman things were done to make the local community understand how the wetland is seen by people outside the wetland space. And we engaged in various, role play, theater roles, where the students would take forms of the various non-human components of the wetlands itself, such as some would play the role of fish, some would play the role of, a plant that are important to the wetlands existence. And we would play out this as part of a learning, a co-exchange exercise, where both the academic team and the young adults were getting were learning new knowledges about the space, about the methods that are being employed to understand the space. And with that, we went into the first phase of the PEEP project. So this is where we had started the applying we had started applying the use of these methods. So what was this? So the first part is the data collection phase. So in this particular phase, we realized that we cannot just tell the students that, okay, you have to conduct interviews, you have to conduct focus group discussion, you observe people and write answers. These are methods that are being taught in in courses of higher education. It is being applied by people who are in their graduation, in their masters, and doctoral and postdoctoral researchers. Teaching these methods to these young students of class 8 and 9 might be very interesting, but it would be also challenging, because they are young kids. They are very curious to learn about new things, but if not taught properly, the entire thing will fall out. So what we did was, we started organizing training sessions on making the students understand what ethnography actually is. So what we did, we would first of all tell them what these methods are and why these are applied. Then we started to tell them the application of these methods by giving them examples from our own research. Like in the IIT academic team, there are a lot of researchers like me and other researchers as well, who are doing their doctoral works and master's works as well. So the way we apply these methods as in our own field works, we started telling them that to them, but in a form of a story. So we would teach them like the storytelling perspective. What if I am telling the students about an interaction that I had on field? I can tell the students that, but in a very engaging manner. But it was done through the method of a key informant interview. So like I would teach them that. Another researcher would show them a picture, a photograph of something they had taken on the field, and she or he would explain why that picture was taken, what it signified. So when we were teaching the students this methods and all, we were a little bit apprehensive that whether are they understanding these methods and all. But we were so amazed by the response the students had. After each session, we would conduct a very a lesson reflection session that we had with them. We would ask them that what they learned, and if they had any questions. And these were very dynamic sessions. The students had very critical feedback regarding what we as doctoral students have done in our field. They had very important feedback about them. They would ask us about why this particular method was applied in the field, why not another method was applied, and whether the data we collected, was it actually appropriate, shouldn't we have done something else to understand that, why haven't we applied the visualization techniques and all. So it was a very engaging understanding, and we realized that this mode of dissemination through the storytelling narrative of the different ethnographic techniques are actually helping the students. They are understanding that how they can perceive the space, and they are visualizing these concepts in their own mind on how they can be applied in their home. Then we had to come to the second part of the toolkit, that is the visualization method. Whatever the students have learned, they need to produce outputs for that through the visual methods. How would they do that? These students belong to very marginalized communities from wetlands. They are living in spaces where there are often not no electricity. They forget mobile internet connections. So how would they capture what they have learned? So we developed, a different, tangible toolkit for them, where we provided them some tools for data collection. We gave them some mobile phones. The 16 students were given, mobile phones that would be used as recording devices for photography, videography, and audio record whenever they are going to the field, whenever they are conducting interviews, etc. And they were given notebooks to take note of all what they have learned in the field, on when or to form questionnaires, to talk to the people, to note down the important questions and all. They were given pens and pencils, and they were given sketchbooks, because this is the forte of this young students. They are all excellent artists. So we told them that a part of this project was their understanding of the space through a very interesting and engaging visual method. We told them that what after every field session, what you would do is to draw whatever you understood from the space. So this particular toolkit that we provided them consisted of these different equipments, and with this we began the second part of the data collection process, that is the field exposure trips. After we had conducted several ethnography sessions within the classrooms of the schools, we decided them to take them to the field. And what is the field here? Because they are already inhabitants of the wetlands. What other concept of field they can understand? So we had a lot of debates around it, but then we realized that why not take them to the sewage fed fisheries itself? The connection between the city of Kolkata and the EKW. So we decided to take them to this multiple sewage fed fisheries, ranging from the government to the cooperative fishery and to the private fishery. So for the government one, we went to the Nalbon fishery. For cooperative, it was the fishery's name was Boro Choynabi fishery, and for private we went to another fishery called the Jhogra fisheries, and they had their different interesting components of identity, of structure, of cohesion. But what we told the students when we took them to the field exposure trips, we always went with them. It not to monitor them, but to guide them in case they needed any help. So they started conducting transect walks. They would walk around in small groups and see the space, and in that group, like if a particular group had 4 or 5 students, each would be they themselves had assigned themselves roles, that one would be only mapping the space in their sketchbook, another would be only taking pictures and videos, another would be taking conducting interviews, and the other person will be taking the notes of those interviews. And this was a very interesting process, a dynamic process. These young custodians of the space had so many questions, and we researchers, even in this age, when we go to the field, we feel a lot of apprehension, like whether we would be getting the right answers or not. But we were amazed by the confidence possessed by the students. They were talking to big bureaucratic officials from the state fishery without any hesitation. They were asking the right questions, because they are the people living in the space. They are the people who are facing the problems posed by the urbanization. They are the ones who know the challenges that is being produced by the unequal distribution of wastewater. So they were asking those questions not in a, I would say, arrogant manner, but when young minds they start questioning things, they sound very strong. So they were very strong in gaining and obtaining that data from these various practitioners. So in this particular data collection process, we were seeing one practitioner of the space, one group of practitioners, the young minds, questioning other practitioners who are actually engaged in livelihood practices in the EKW. And this took us to the second phase of this project, that is the analysis phase. So the data collection and the analysis phase actually went hand in hand. So after each site visit, we would conduct a reflection session with students. because they are school students. We know they already have a lot of pressure regarding their school curriculum and all, and it would be we cannot actually expect them to give all of their time. But the data they have collected, the experience they have had in the field, that should be collected while it's in their fresh mind as well. So these in this reflection visits, we would sit with the students and we would ask them that what was your perception before you went here? What were the questions that you had in your mind that you wanted to ask? And did you get the answers? What are the answers? Just tell me in a very short and summarized manner. Did you get expected answers, or did you learn something new? So through this very intense reflection sessions, we would see and gauge whether this toolkit has actually helped the students in seeing the space in a very different manner. And this would be followed by assignments. So after each visit, we would give the students an assignment that whatever you have understood from the field, the ethnographic data that you have collected through these methods, provide that to us in a very interesting visualization technique. It can be any visualization technique of their choice. They can produce it through a photo essay, they can produce it through an illustration, they can produce it through a drawing, but it is up to them. So this was the analysis part, and the students came up with brilliant understandings here. You see in this there is a picture on the right side of the screen. You will see this is actually a 3D cardboard model that the students had developed of one fishery in the wetlands, the Nolborn fishery or the government fed fishery. So this was actually the only fishery that they had never visited in, because this was not accessible to all. So the students as part of one of the assignments had developed this 3D model, because they wanted to remember the space as they had visualized it, as they had then as they have walked around the lanes of it, and how they had seen the periphery of Kolkata on the other side of the ponds. So when they gave us this this 3D cardboard model, we realized that the students have started to internalize the the concept or the motivation of the PEEP project, and they are now starting to see their own space in a very different way, and they by themselves are coming up with such innovative perceptions. So we took this model to actually a small engagement workshop or like a symposium we had at the US consulate on climate change in the wetlands, and we took this model with some of the school students and asked them to present this to the authorities there. And there were students from some of the city schools there as well, and our students from the Bamunghat and the Kheyadaho High School confidently presented their findings with the use of this particular method. So we realized that the first two phases of the PEEP had come out successfully. What we learnt about this phase, what we taught to the students about this phase, and how the students are now seeing the space in a new manner have all came out successfully. Now the next step was to make the other practitioners of the space, the Bheri owners or the managers of the space, see if this this SMUS glass or this SMUS toolkit applied by the students is actually effective or not, which took us to the third phase, that is the practical empirical implementation phase. So this was a very crucial juncture of this project, because the students needed to disseminate their understanding of the space to this local community practitioners. So we held a local community practitioner workshop where we had invited all these Bheri practitioners, the school teachers, and some collaborators from institutes of educational importance, government importance, such as the Fisheries Institute and all, and some NGOs to come and see what the students have learned about the space using this SMUS glass method. And this was the first time the students were told to present their findings to their own people. This was a testing time for both of us. For the academic team, because we had now left the methods in the hands of the students, and also for the students themselves, because they are using to they are providing their understandings to their own community. Now they only, so this was a very interesting stage of the project as well. And the students started producing their understandings through very innovative drawings and sketches to the people, to the practitioners of the space. And one of the major contributions of this entire process was their perception of not only the wetlands but the city. As I told you in the beginning of the lecture, that when we had started orienting them, we saw that they had a very negative perception of the city. They saw that they always call the city the threat, that how the city is harming the wetlands, how the urbanization of the city is actually, how it is destroying the ecology of the space. But now this is a very interesting thing happened. Now we saw that the students were talking about that the city is actually helping the wetlands in sustaining itself. So it showed a very interesting codependent relationship between the city and the wetlands. So the EKW, just how it is helping in sustaining the city, it is also the wastewater of the city that is helping the wetlands to survive. And this was a very important and pivotal moment for us in the PEEP project. And we realized that this also touched the practitioners as well, because this was the moment they realized that they can leave their differences aside and come together, and the city and the local community has to work together in safeguarding the space through by forming a fraternity here on this sense. And this took us to the last part of the PEEP stage, that is the evaluation stage, where we exhibited these findings from PEEP in a form of an exhibition. So this was conducted in one of the city schools in Kolkata, where the students, our students from wetlands, were told to develop those ethno-graphic outputs, their understanding, and present it to the students, to this particular space. And they had developed very interesting modes of dissemination. They had developed cardboard models. They had developed long scroll paintings. They had started developing masks that showed why the non-human components of wetlands are also important in sustaining the space, and they actually presented it through plays and all. So a lot of things were going on in this exhibition. So sometimes in one of the plays, actually they recreated the interview scenes that they had done from the field. And in other plays, they would play the role of the various non-human components, such as a fish or a jackal or a bird, and some would play the role of pollutants themselves, on how they are affecting the wetlands and how it should be changed. So finally, I'll end this lecture with these two particular outputs. That is, on the left side you see a hand-drawn painting. It's a Pottochitro painting. So Pottochitro is actually part of Bengal's indigenous art itself. In this painting, you see a lot of human and non-human aspects, going on. So the main component, the main narrator of this Pottochitro is the this bacteria that is moving around, that green bacterial formation, and it shows that without the presence of that bacterial component that comes through the wastewater of the city, none of this equation wouldn't have survived. Not the flora, not the fauna. The city would have been different. The wetlands, we don't know if it would have existed, but not in the way we are seeing today. So in this Pottochitro, the students tried to depict these human and non-human equations, and why we need to focus on solidifying these connections that are existing between Kolkata and EKW. They also developed, on the right side of the slide, you see a 3D model of the EKW. where they tried to integrate the components of an urban city with the naturality of EKW, and show that how the East Kolkata wetlands isn't a separate distinct feature, but a co-evolved space, and is part of Kolkata's heritage, her natural ecological heritage. And through this understanding of ethno-graphy, where we have applied the PEEP project, these understandings, we must safeguard this crucial space in future. Thank you.